rocking and rolling. Okay, go. You're good.
Good to go? Okay.
Yep.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for coming to the class. It's Tim, and you can, interrupt me if you have questions or anything like that. Call me Tim, ISTAT guy, you in the orange, whatever works to get my attention works for me. And I just want you to interrupt me if you do have questions so that you don't lose your question. All right, so feel free, if you have questions, just stop me and we'll go over that. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, so let me just give you a brief, overview of what the ISTAT is. So first of all, you have your handheld right here, all right? And just kind of an interesting note to make is that I didn't call this an analyzer, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. You have your handheld right here. This is where you'll get your results and everything like that. And we'll go over this in a little bit more detail. The second piece is the cartridge, all right? And you guys have the Chem8 cartridge, which looks just like this. Now, the interesting thing and the reason I made that note is that this cartridge is actually the analyzer. All right, so all of the testing that's going on and all of the results are being done inside of this cartridge. All right, and then what the handheld does is it reads the results for you and stores the information and displays the results for you. All right, so just kind of interesting that the analyzer itself is this tiny piece of technology in this package right here. And we'll open that up in a bit, and get your hands on it. The third piece that we don't have there in the room is the downloader, and that's the docking station for this. Have you guys seen it? I think it's already set up.
Yeah, I have it on the docking station.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So it fits in the docking station, and that's where you want to put it, when you're not using it. That way everyone knows where it is. And I believe, if I remember from last week, Nora, you guys are using rechargeable batteries?
I believe so.
So
I'm not absolutely sure, but I think that's what we had in one of the other boxes.
okay, perfect. So the rechargeable batteries, they can stay in the ISTAT, and you just put the ISTAT in the docking station, and it will keep the battery recharged. All right, so makes it nice and easy. You don't have to take the battery out or anything like that. If you ever do, so here's the ISTAT. The battery is at the top, all right, and it's this door right here. And so that's what it looks like with no battery in it. So you can see that, all right? And the battery only fits in one way. So if you put it in the wrong way, the door won't go on. So there's no risk of, frying it or anything like that. All right, so the first thing I want to really get into detail and discuss with you guys today actually isn't about the ISTAT necessarily. It is your sample. All right, the sample, and the reason I want to start with this is because this is the most important thing, not just of the ISTAT, but of any test, right? Of any test you're going to do. If you don't start with a good sample, you can't get a good result out of it, right? So just a couple things to remember. And just so you guys know, I'm not wearing gloves. This is coffee. It's not blood.
Well, you have interesting things that you draw up.
Yep. The coffee monsters over here in Cincinnati. Okay, so the first thing is you guys are, for the most part, and this is kind of going off our discussion yesterday, Nora, but for the most part, you're going to be drawing into a heparinized green top tube. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so
You don't need to write this down. We'll be doing it up for you.
exactly. And
So you can listen.
there are two really important things about that tube. All right, so the first one is you want to make sure that it's filled to its capacity. And usually, they have a little mark on them, and they'll stop filling once you hit that mark, right? The ISTAT uses only 95 microliters of blood. It's just about 5 or 6 drops. But the reason it's important to of getting smaller tubes. And that's something that you guys will probably be looking into it as you move forward with the ISTAT, because again, you only need a tiny amount of blood, right? So there's no reason in drawing a 4 ml tube when you're only going to use a little bit of it. But having said that, if you do have a 4 ml tube, it's still important to fill it to that line, because if you only put a tiny bit into a 4 ml tube, then the ratio of heparin to blood is all thrown off, right? So I think I heard they're looking into 2 ml, or I don't even know if they make them smaller than that. But so you guys are already thinking about, looking into smaller tubes for that reason. So that's the first thing. Fill the tube up to the capacity so that you maintain that ratio of heparin to blood. The second thing that's just as important, so you want to fill the tube, and then the second thing is just mix your tube like this, 8 to 10 times. So mixing your tube is just as important as filling the tube, right? Because when you have a heparinized tube, the heparin is along the outside of the tube. So when you fill it, you need to mix it to make sure the heparin gets all throughout your sample. All right? So fill the tube and then mix it. And our motto here with ISTAT is very simple. It's mix, mix, mix. Because that's really the most important thing, right? Is making sure you fill the tube and mix it properly. So, so that would be a green top tube. All right. Now, with the ionized calcium on the Chem A cartridge, your green top tube is good for 10 minutes. All right. So if you're going to be reporting that ionized calcium, then the green top tube is good for 10 minutes. If you're not going to be reporting the ionized calcium for whatever reason, your sample would be good for 30 minutes for the rest of those analytes. But again, if you're always reporting out the ionized calcium, 10 minutes, you got to use your sample within 10 minutes of collection. All right? So the second possibility for you guys, so you have your green top tube, which is heparinized. The second possibility is a plain syringe, right? Maybe you couldn't get it with the tube, you had to do a straight stick, something like that. If you can use a plain syringe, but do you guys know sort of what the challenge is? If you don't have a heparinized sample, what's the challenge?
Coagulation.
Exactly, right? It's going to clot. So you want to make sure that sample immediately, right? So you can use a plain sample, but you have to test it right away. And the other thing with the syringe here is you want to waste the first couple of drops, all right? Because anything, and let's see if I can get this in the camera here, anything up in that hub in there, you can't mix that, right? Because it's just not enough room, so you just want to waste that stuff. Just get rid of those first few drops. All right, so any questions about the sample?
What I'm concerned about is obviously because of the population that we're drawing on.
Yeah.
Would it be completely apocalyptic if for some reason I'm only able to get like 1 milliliter of blood off of somebody because they're a difficult stick? Is that really going to throw off the results?
In a tube, you mean?
Yeah, like if I'm only able to get I'm not able to fill the tube because they're a hard stick.
So I guess it depends. I'm just going to default to yes. On that one, it will affect the result.
Right.
It depends. If you can get it maybe like 3/4 of the way filled, I think that's what BD, the tube, the company that makes most of the tubes,
Okay.
That's generally what they say is 3/4 or more full.
Okay.
With anything less than that, and it can start to affect. Now that's where you could pull, if you can, you could get a plain sample, and there it doesn't matter how much you get.
Oh, that's
You
true.
know what I mean?
Okay.
If you can collect it in a plain syringe, you can get a tiny bit, and it's still okay.
Okay.
Because again, this cartridge takes 95 microliters, which ends up being like I said, 5 or 6 drops of blood, somewhere like
You
that.
don't need a lot of blood on that testing strip.
Okay. And
know what
it
I mean?
has-
It's a heparin, because it's heparinized, you gotta get the right ratio.
Right, I
But on
understand.
this, you'll see when he explains it, it's like a glucose monitor, you only have a little bit of blood.
Right,
That's why we need to order the smaller tubes.
okay. The other question I have is, if for some reason, I'm not able to get a straight stick and I have to use a tube, but I know I'm not gonna be able to get enough in the green tube, could you use one of the regular red tubes?
Yeah, you would
Because
just,
it doesn't have heparin in it?
well,
It's just a,
yeah, I guess.
it's one of the waste tubes?
Yeah, it doesn't have heparin in it, so his point is, you
Right, as long as it
gotta,
doesn't have heparin in it, I don't have to.
you gotta use the sample right away.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
but you have to use it, okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if you had to use the green one to fit like the car, you know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
no, you'll see.
Okay.
You'll see.
Alright, yeah, I'll just stop talking.
Well, when he gets more into that, you'll understand all of
Okay,
that. yeah.
alright.
Sorry,
And
I didn't mean to take over.
your point about the
Been through
red
this
tube,
training.
just make sure that my answer is a plain tube is the same as a plain syringe, right?
Right,
There's
yeah.
no ratio you have to meet. Just make sure that red tube really is plain, because sometimes those red tubes actually have like a clot activator or something like that in them.
Gotcha. Okay,
But if it truly is just a plain tube with no additive at all, that would be fine.
okay. Alright, thank you.
Yep, sure. Good question. Okay, so we're good on the sample. Let's move on to, let's see, let's do the cartridge. So here we go. Let's talk about this cartridge a little bit.
You don't need to open it if you don't, because.
Yeah, you can ahead of time. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, but we're going to open it in a couple minutes here anyway. So, so here's the cartridge. Now, first of all, I see you have a box of them there. They come in boxes of 25. All right, so you get 25 in a box. When they're shipped, they are cold. All right, so they're shipped cold. When you receive them, you want them to go right into the refrigerator. All right, and it actually, I'm not sure if I'll be able to get this on camera. You see that right there? That's your temperature indicator. So it actually tells you right on the packaging at what temperature you want to store them. And this is 2 to 8 degrees Celsius or 35 to 46 Fahrenheit. All right. Then you'll also notice that right above that is the expiration date. That is the refrigerated expiration date. All right. So that's your expiration date refrigerated. So receive them right into the fridge, and they should always come with a temperature strip right on top. Right? And it's important to check that temperature strip because it'll indicate if at some point in the shipping the temperature exceeded 46 degrees Fahrenheit. All right. And if that happens, then you got to call the distributor and let them know right away. But usually, the temperature strip's fine. You put them right in the fridge. Then when you use them, so here's the trick to these. When you use them, you want them to be at room temperature. All right. Once they come to room temperature, and this is right here on the back, they're good for 14 days. So they're good for 2 weeks at room temperature. All right. When you take one cartridge out of the fridge, it'll be ready in 5 minutes. So you got 5 minutes, it'll be ready at room temperature. If you're going to take a whole box and let a whole box come up to room temperature, that takes 1 hour because they're all in there insulating each other and, things like that. So 1 hour for a box, 5 minutes if you're going to do an individual cartridge. And what I've been telling the other classes is even if you're going to take these out of the fridge as needed, like you're not going to leave any at room temperature, you still want to have a designated place for room temperature cartridges, because if you take a cartridge out and then realize the test was canceled, you're not going to run that test, you can't put these back in the refrigerator. So you want to just write that 2-week expiration date right down here. That's what that spot's for right down here. Write that, so 2 weeks from the day you took it out, and then put it, in that designated place for room temperature cartridges. And that's where you guys should look first. You know what I mean? Since it's only a 2-week expiration at room temperature, look to see if there's any room temp cartridges. Use those first as long as they're not expired. And if not, then, grab one out of the fridge and let it warm up for 5 minutes. you know, this, this, right? Or I even had someone tell me they tried to microwave it once. So you don't want, yeah, I know. You don't want to do any of that stuff because it will actually affect the moisture in the package. Right? If it comes up to room temperature too quickly, moisture forms too quickly, and it'll affect the cartridge. Right? So that's why you want to give it 5 minutes. You know, generally, grab this out of the fridge and, you know, grab your machine, grab all the stuff you need to draw your blood. By the time you've got your sample, it's probably 5 minutes unless you're the fastest, you know, phlebotomist in the world. And even then, I don't know. So 5 minutes and you're good to go. So at that point, at this point, you guys can tear those open. Go ahead and rip them open. And just dump them out either onto your hand or onto the table, whatever works for you. And while you're doing that, just one thing to notice, see if I can point this out. So, right here, this is your list, you know, sodium, potassium, chloride, ionized calcium, glucose. That's your list of analytes, the things you'll get, you know, the results you'll get. You see the black line that's separating them? Everything above that black line is being directly measured, and then anything below the black line is a calculated value. So anion gap and hemoglobin on this are calculated. Everything else is measured. Right, just so you know that. All right, so let's take a look at the cartridge itself now. And by the way, the blue side here is the top of it, and then there's the clear side, which is the bottom of it. So just so you know, blue is the top, the clear side with the silver pouch is the back or the bottom.
That's the top.
So, so I'm going to give you a chance. Just kind of look at this for a second and take a look at the different components and tell me where you think there are some areas where you might want to avoid touching. What do you guys think? Give me some guess.
Right, he knows.
What? Here, here, here.
Where it enters the
top.
machine.
Yeah.
Top, yeah.
So I think the first thing I heard was the top of it. Did
Yeah.
someone say that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So the top, I think this is what you're referring to, right? These electrodes that run across the top.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great point because those are the electrodes. And so if you grab the cartridge like this, right, and your hands, your fingers are on those electrodes, and you didn't realize that you had water or dust or saline or anything that might be on your glove, well, that just transferred over to the sensor. And the ISTAT will detect that the sensor has been compromised, and it will suppress the result. So you won't see a result if the ISTAT determines that this sensor could not be trusted. All right, so if you ever see a result with 3 little stars, so you're looking for your number, and instead of a number, you see 3 little asterisks, that's telling you that at some point, the sensor was compromised, and it didn't trust the result, so it's not going to show you that result. All right. Now, if that should ever happen on hematocrit, so hemoglobin is calculated based off of the hematocrit reading. So if it doesn't get a value for hematocrit, it can't give you a hemoglobin either, right? And what you'll see for hemoglobin are 2 brackets like this pointing towards each other. And that just means it didn't have the necessary number to calculate the hemoglobin. All right, just in case you ever see that. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting, I think, is that each of those analytes, sodium, potassium, ionized calcium, they all have their own individual sensor on here. So just because one of them is compromised does not mean they're all compromised. So, for example, you could compromise the potassium, and the potassium might star out on you. It might give you 3 stars. But if sodium gives you a result, then that sodium result is trustworthy and accurate. All right, so value stars out, but you didn't need that value, you can still use the rest of your value. All right, and again, that's because each one has its own individual sensor, which is checked individually of all the other ones. All right, so all good so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so give me one more guess then. So you don't want to touch the top. Give me another guess. Where else might you want to avoid?
Where that little hole is, right in the, where there's a tab coming out at the side, and there's
Okay.
a little hole.
Okay, perfect. You mean right down here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this is your sample well right there. That's your sample well, and that's always a good idea, right, to avoid touching that. Now this piece over here, that's the door or the lid. So that actually flips up and over and snaps shut. So your sample goes right in here, and it goes up to about here, where the clear meets the blue. So your sample only goes from here to here, and then it stops. And then once you put your sample in, you flip this door up and over, like that, and snap it shut. So don't do that quite yet, because we'll put our sample in there first, but I just wanted to demo that for you. And that's a good, another good point. You don't want to touch that whole area because, again, you never know what's on your fingers that you're not quite aware of, and it could transfer over. And the last place on here where you really want to avoid, you see this silver dot right here in the middle? Mm-hmm. If you flip the cartridge over, that's a whole pouch, like a silver pouch in the back. That is the calibration pouch. The ISTAT will calibrate every time you run a test. It does a new calibration, and it uses that to calibrate. So if you pinch that and you squeeze it, or another example is, a lot of people will put the cartridge down on the table. Let me see if I can get a good view of this here. Put the cartridge down on the table. They're going to put their syringe, their sample in, and people will pin the cartridge down to the table right there. But if you push on that, you can actually burst that little pouch, and then the ISTAT won't be able to calibrate, and it will ask you to go get another cartridge. All right, so you don't want to push down on that little silver dot there or pinch it or anything like that, because it might burst that pouch and then you won't be able to use that cartridge. So, easiest way to remember all that stuff, there are two ways you want to handle this. The first one is by the long side. So you can always handle it safely by the side. The second one is the little thumb piece down here. That only exists for you to handle it down there. So handle it either there or there. And if you get into that habit, you'll be totally fine with these. You'll avoid all sorts of problems. All right, so any questions on the cartridge?
Girls?
Nothing?
No, we're good to go.
No questions.
Okay, let's move on then. And what we're going to do is set up the handheld itself now.
Okay.
So go ahead and grab the handheld.
Okay, here you go, Caroline, you get used to doing it.
All right. And turn it on, and it's the little circle with the line through it. That's the power button. So go ahead and turn it on. And it should take you to the test menu.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, we are.
Okay, perfect. And you only have two options here, right? You have number one, last result, number two, ISTAT cartridge. Do you want to give me a guess what you think we're going to go for a patient test?
2.
2, exactly, right? That's barely a guess. So, go ahead and hit number 2. And what is it asking you for now?
Scan or enter operator ID.
Perfect. Okay, so for today, you can just put, 1, 2, 3, 4 in there. This is where you'll be actually scanning your badge. All right. Now today, when you scan your badge, you only have to do it one time. Today, since we're manually entering, it'll probably ask you to do it
Enter
twice.
again, honey.
Yep.
All right. And once you're through that, what is the next screen? What is it asking you for now?
Scan or enter patient ID.
Perfect. All right. So patient ID. Nora, I can't remember.
We've gotta decide what we're gonna use. We don't know yet. Probably, I don't know, social security number, medical record number, or something.
Okay, so still to be determined which number, but this is where you'll enter the patient identification number, whether it's the medical record number or something else. Again, for today, just put, all ones or all 9, something like that,
Just put one.
and then hit enter.
How many just
3 or 4? 4?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, just
Whatever you get, as long as you can duplicate it, just remember to duplicate.
again. Do it again.
And then,
You're so smart.
one?
We got it. We're good.
got it?
Yep.
And are you now on the scanner enter cartridge lot number?
Yep.
Right.
All right, so here's where you'll get to practice with the scanner here. Here's the scan button, the big one up at the top. You want to press and hold that scan button.
This is
All right, let me see if I can get the laser
This
on
gets
the
a little tricky.
screen here.
Gotta press
Okay,
and hold
press
that.
and hold that
Scan.
button and give it about 6 to 12 inches. So you want to give it a lot of
There you
room
go.
because the scanner has to get all the way across
I
the
think it's a
barcode.
little tricky. You gotta kinda, yeah, we got it.
You got it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. All right. So now what does your screen say?
Insert cartridge.
Okay, perfect. So at this point, you're done with that machine. That's all you have to do. Turn it on, hit number 2, scan your badge, type in the patient number or scan it, depending on what you have there, and then scan the cartridge lot number, and you're done. You're done with this machine. It's ready to run the test. Now, once you hit that insert cartridge screen, it will stay there for 15 minutes without turning on.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
All right, so you can set that up ahead of time. It'll stay on for 15 minutes. And, in a perfect world, 15 minutes is plenty of time. I know that the medical world is,
Sorry about your tuberculosis.
very far from the perfect world a lot of times. So, let's say you set this
I
up
can draw it right.
Yep.
and you go to draw your blood, and someone comes into the room and suddenly they're talking to you to get some information on another patient, something like that, where you set this up maybe 10 minutes ago, and now you're just going to draw your blood. And you look over at the machine and you feel that anxious feeling inside because it's going to turn off on you, right? What you can do is hit the scan button and it'll reset the clock back up to 15.
Oh, nice.
So all you have to do is hit scan. You won't see anything happen. You'll just hear it beep, and it resets the clock. It's the same thing as sort of waving your mouth, kind of like what we have to do here every now and then. Same thing. So, my advice is if you're ever unsure or if you ever start to feel that, that anxious creeping feeling, just hit scan and look at the clock and you've got a full 15 minutes. All right?
It's a good thing.
So, any questions on this part?
No.
Okay. Then the next thing we're going to do is actually fill your cartridge and run the test. So what I'll do really quickly, if I can, I'll fill my cartridge here and try to give you a good view of that, and then you guys can go if you want to go ahead of time, go for it. I'll see if I can't get a good view of my cartridge here. Let's see.
You're a
Probably
pro.
that. Okay. So I'm going to fill mine here. Again, you guys can sort of go. Okay. Move my finger out of the way. All right, and then we have that's what the closed cartridge looks like. and then you take your machine right here, and it goes in the bottom of the machine. So it goes right down there, clicks into place. And by the way, I'm holding this up, but when you do it, you want it to be on the table. Right? And I should have said that first, but I'm holding it up to show, but so you want it to be, flat and level on the table. But the cartridge will stick out at the bottom. All right, so it clicks into place, and the thumb piece will stick out, and the sample will stick out as well. All right.
Once it's
And the
in.
first thing it will do is identify the cartridge. All right, and that's probably what it's showing you on the screen right there.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So there are two really important things while this is testing that you don't want to do. All right, and you can probably guess what one or two of them are. But the first one is you don't want to pull the cartridge out while it's testing. All right. So let me tell you why. When this is testing, the machine itself locks the cartridge into place. It uses two pins, and the pins come up from the bottom and lock the cartridge into place. Those pins are how this machine reads the results off of your cartridge. So if you were to yank the cartridge out while it's testing, which is not exactly easy to do, so you'll really have to put some muscle behind it. You might even have to get your boot up on the table and yank. But if you were to do that, it would break this whole thing.
Which is $10,000.
So that's one. And by the way, the handhelds are military grade. The easiest way to break it is to pull the cartridge out while it's testing. And I swear I'm not making this up, but I had someone tell me that they instructed their helicopter to land on this one to test that military grade, and it worked fine afterwards.
Oh my God.
So, and I swear someone told me that. I don't know if it actually happened, but someone told me that. So the easiest way to break it is to pull the cartridge out while it's testing. So you don't want to do that. Remember that this is only a 2-minute test, right? So if you realize something went wrong, just let it finish and then, redo it. The second thing you don't want to do is walk around with it. You don't want to pick it up and move it while it's testing. You want it to stay flat and level. Because you'll hear it making all kinds of noise. That's the cartridge moving the sample around, right? And any kind of movement can interrupt that. So you want this to stay flat and level while it's testing, and you do not want to pull this out while it's testing. All right. Now, is your test still going, or do we have
Yep.
results already?
No, we're almost there.
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
And what you'll see a timer on here. It's actually counting down. So it's 120 seconds counting down to 0.
Yeah, we're a little ways to go.
Yeah.
And it should be when it's done.
Yep, they're up there.
Okay. All right, perfect.
Little
So-
sodium is a little low.
Is it? Well, the potassium was off a little bit.
All right. So now you can pull the cartridge out, and notice how easily it just,
Right.
unclicks. Pretty much as easily as it went in there, right?
Yep.
So now the right arrow key right here next to the ABC button, that is how you page over to the next screen of results, because your Chem 8 will give you 2 full pages of results. So make sure you page over, see the second page there.
Wow.
Pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that is cool.
Okay, perfect. Now, when you print, and we're going to talk about printing in a little bit, when you print, you just have to make sure your result is on the screen. It can be either page. You don't have to print like both pages. You just put one of those pages up, hit print, and it'll print the whole thing. All right.
And it has to
I'll
be.
show you that in just a couple minutes here.
It has to be docked to print, right?
Does not have to be docked.
Oh, okay.
but you can set it up. You can set up the printer and the docking station using that one cord, Nora, that kind of looks like a phone.
Yeah, I got that set up.
Yeah, perfect. So using that cord, you can dock this and then just, get your result on the screen and hit print. The other way to print, and we might as well just launch into it here. So do you guys have the printer
Yep,
there on the table?
yep, it's ready to go.
Okay, perfect. So first thing to notice is the infrared window right here on the ISTAT, and this is the top of the ISTAT. You got the infrared
No,
window
it's
right
actually
there.
right here. Oh, so what you're gonna do, Carolina, is bring it over.
The printer also has an infrared window,
So you're gonna line just the
the
infrared. up
black
with
window that
infrared.
looks very
Can I
similar
turn
to
this?
this.
No, well, yes.
You just line those two things up.
Yeah.
Give them 6 to 12 inches. They don't have to be, touching. They can be about this far. Make sure your result is on the screen and
And
hit
then
print,
press print.
which is this button in the bottom middle.
Oh my.
Wow.
All right.
Stop, it stopped. Keep,
And the thing is, because this is infrared, it's a live stream of information. So if you hit print and then pull the iStat away,
there.
it'll cut the printer off.
Yeah, okay,
Oh,
you're good
that's
now.
what I did. Okay.
Yeah. So,
There's-
just hit print and then let it print, and then you can move the iStat away.
That's awesome.
Is there any certain amount of time between when the result shows up on the screen that you're able to print? Does it have to be in the first 5 minutes?
No.
Can
No,
you wait
you,
till-
you could pull up the result days later if you wanted to and print it out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's on the menu here.
So that
This'll
would be
go
a
off.
reason to go to that last result option.
Well, the first
print.
is the last result,
Yeah.
and then you could scroll through too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, now these store
Amazing.
over 1,000 results each, these handhelds. So, if you had a test 5 months ago, I would imagine it would still be stored in here. I'll show you how to go back and pull those.
Careful, honey.
Are you okay?
Yes, I'm fine.
Oh my god.
She was trying to keep out of the light.
I think
of
we
fire.
need to check Nora's
No.
blood.
I only do one show, okay? I was just trying to get up.
No,
Lazy.
Those-
Sorry.
Those chairs, I want